Am I the jerk for not giving my restaurant savings to my sister and getting kicked out because of it? I had spent years saving every penny, dreaming of opening my own restaurant. It was not just a dream. It was my future, my passion, and my escape from a life where I had always been overlooked. But one day, my older sister, Melanie, stormed into my room with tears in her eyes, demanding I hand over my savings. She had mismanaged her finances again, and now, she and her husband were drowning in debt. She needed my money to fix it. I refused. I'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much. But my mother did not see it that way. She called me selfish, heartless. And before I knew it, I was standing outside, bags in hand, kicked out of the only home I had ever known. But what happened next? That was something none of them saw coming. Growing up, I always knew my place in the family. My older sister, Melanie, was the golden child, the one my parents adored, the one who could do no wrong. She had the brightest smile, the best grades, and the most charming personality, at least in my parents' eyes. They spoiled her endlessly. She got everything she wanted, from expensive clothes to vacations, while I was expected to fend for myself. If Melanie messed up, my parents fixed it. If I messed up, I was lectured about responsibility and consequences. Despite this, I never hated her. I accepted that my life would always be different from hers. Instead of resenting my situation, I poured all my energy into my dream, to open my own restaurant. Cooking was my escape. It was the one thing I was truly passionate about. While Melanie was out shopping or partying, I was in the kitchen, experimenting with recipes. When I turned 16, I got my first job at a small diner, saving every penny I could. At family dinners, my parents would praise Melanie for whatever insignificant thing she had done, while I barely got a nod of acknowledgement. They did not even know how hard I was working. They never asked. Even when I graduated college and decided to continue working to fund my restaurant dream instead of pursuing a serious career, my parents scoffed. "You are wasting your time," my mother told me. "Melanie is going to be successful, and you are playing with food," my father added dismissively. I did not argue. I had stopped trying to prove myself to them long ago. While Melanie spent thousands on handbags, I lived modestly. I avoided unnecessary expenses, took every extra shift available, and sacrificed nights out with friends to keep growing my savings. After years of effort, I had managed to save a significant amount, enough to take my first real steps toward opening my restaurant. That money was everything to me. It represented every sleepless night, every burn from the kitchen, every sacrifice. But then, Melanie showed up at my door, and everything changed. Melanie had always lived lavishly. Unlike me, she never worried about money. Our parents paid for her dream college, funded her expensive wedding, and helped her buy a house. She married Josh, a man just like her, reckless, entitled, and obsessed with maintaining an image of wealth. For years, Melanie flaunted her extravagant lifestyle. She and Josh traveled to exotic locations, bought designer clothes, and posted glamorous pictures online, making sure the world saw how perfect their life was. But their spending habits caught up with them. It started with small things, missed bill payments, a few financial hiccups. Then, Josh made some bad investments. Soon, their debts piled up. Their dream home was at risk, and they were drowning in overdue payments. One evening, my phone rang. It was my mother. "You need to help your sister," she said, her tone sharp and demanding. I frowned. "Help her how?" "Give her your savings," she said, as if it was the most logical thing in the world. "She needs it more than you do." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. "My savings?" I repeated. "Mom, that money is for my restaurant. I have worked for years. And your sister worked hard for her life too," she interrupted. "She and Josh have had a difficult time. She is going to lose everything." I clenched my jaw. "That is not my fault." My mother let out an exasperated sigh. "You are being selfish. Family helps each other. Do you think Melanie would hesitate if it were you?" I almost laughed. Melanie had never once lifted a finger to help me. "Melanie made her choices," I said firmly. "She spent money she did not have. I am not going to sacrifice my dream because of her mistakes." The silence on the other end of the call was chilling. "I am very disappointed in you," my mother finally said. The next day, Melanie showed up at my apartment, tears in her eyes. She had never looked so desperate. "Please," she whispered, "if you ever love me as your sister, please help me." I stared at her, my heart pounding. I had a choice to make. Melanie sat on my couch, dabbing at her perfectly made-up face with a tissue. Even in her distress, she looked flawless. That had always been her thing. Appearances mattered more than reality. I stood across from her, arms crossed, waiting. "You do not understand," she sniffled. "Josh and I are losing everything. The house, the cars, we're drowning in debt." I clenched my fists. "And that is my problem? How exactly?" She let out a dramatic sigh, shaking her head. "You have the money. I know you do. Mom and Dad told me. You could help us." Her words stung. Mom and Dad had no right to discuss my finances with her. But of course, they saw no issue with it. In their eyes, everything I had was just a resource to be redistributed to Melanie if she needed it. "That money is for my restaurant," I said firmly. Melanie let out a bitter laugh. "A restaurant? Seriously? That is your excuse? A dream? That is ridiculous." I felt my patience snap. "You think my dream is ridiculous? I have worked every single day for years to save up for it. While you were spending thousands on designer bags, I was working double shifts. I lived in a tiny apartment while you lived in a mansion. And now, you want me to hand over everything I worked for?" Tears welled up in her eyes again, but this time, I did not feel sympathy. "You do not get it," she whispered. "Josh is talking about divorce. If we lose everything, he will leave me." I blinked, taken aback. So, that was what this was really about. She was not scared of being broke. She was scared of losing her husband and the perfect life she had created. "You want my money, so you can keep pretending everything is fine," I said slowly. Her silence confirmed it. Please, she said again. You are my sister. I shook my head. No, Melanie. If you had come here and told me you were willing to change, to work hard, to fix your mistakes, maybe I would have helped you. But you just want a handout. I will not be your backup plan. Her expression darkened. You are making a huge mistake. Am I? I raised an eyebrow. Or are you finally facing the consequences of your own choices? She stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. Fine, she snapped. If you want to be heartless, do not be surprised when Mom and Dad turn their backs on you. I swallowed hard. I knew she meant it, but I also knew I was doing the right thing. That night, I barely slept. My phone kept buzzing with calls and texts from my parents. I ignored them at first, but after the 10th notification, I finally opened one. Mom, how could you do this to your sister? We raised you to be kind and supportive. You should be ashamed of yourself. Dad's message was even worse. Dad, you let your sister down when she needed you the most. This is not what family does. I clenched my teeth. Family? Was I ever really part of this family? Or was I just the convenient second option when Melanie needed something? The messages kept coming. Mom, if you do not help her, do not bother coming home again. Dad, we are done with you. I stared at the screen, feeling a lump rise in my throat. Even though I had expected this reaction, it still hurt. They had always favored Melanie, but deep down, I had held on to the hope that one day they would see me, truly see me, as more than just a backup plan. That day was not today. Early the next morning, there was a knock on my door. My heart pounded as I opened it, expecting to see Melanie again. Instead, Mom and Dad stood there, looking furious. I barely had time to react before Mom pushed past me into my apartment. Where's your checkbook? She demanded. I stared at her. Excuse me? Dad crossed his arms. Enough of this nonsense. You have the money. You're going to help your sister, and that is final. I allowed a hollow laugh. Final? Like I have no choice. Mom's eyes flashed. This is what family does. We support each other. I shook my head. No, this is what I have always done. You have never expected Melanie to support anyone. You have let her walk all over me my entire life, and now you are doing it again. I will not be part of it anymore. Dad's face turned red. You ungrateful brat. We raised you, fed you, gave you everything. I cut him off. You raised me to be Melanie's safety net. That is all I have ever been to you. But I am done. Mom scoffed. Fine. If that is your decision, pack your things. You're no longer welcome in our house. My stomach dropped. You were kicking me out? Dad gave a firm nod. You brought this on yourself. We are choosing Melanie because she is the one who deserves our support. For a moment, I felt like I could not breathe. But then, something inside me clicked. I had been fighting for their love my entire life. I had bent over backward, sacrificed, stayed silent, and let myself be walked on just to be seen as worthy. And now I saw the truth. I was never going to be enough for them. Not because of anything I had done, but because they had never truly wanted me to be. I squared my shoulders and met their eyes. Fine. If that is what you want, I will pack my things. But know this. I will never forget how little I mattered to you. Mom rolled her eyes. Stop being dramatic. Dad just shook his head. You will come crawling back once your little restaurant dream fails. I exhaled, steadying myself. No, I will not. I'm finally free of you. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. Packing my things felt surreal. My childhood bedroom, the place I had, once felt safe, though in hindsight, maybe that was just an illusion, now felt foreign, like I had never truly belonged there. I placed my carefully saved business plans and notebooks into a box, each one representing years of effort. The money I had saved was not just numbers in an account. It was the result of long hours, missed vacations, and a relentless drive to build something of my own. Now, I was leaving behind the people who had never believed in me. As I carried the last of my bags to my car, I saw Melanie standing by the front door. Her arms were crossed, a victorious smirk playing on her lips. That was easier than I thought, she mused. I turned to face her. What do you mean? She shrugged. You always wanted Mom and Dad to love you. I knew the moment they threatened to kick you out, you would cave and give me the money. My stomach dropped. You set this up? She laughed. Of course I did. I mean, did you really think I was about to downgrade my life while you were sitting on a pile of cash? Please. I clenched my fists. So, you manipulated them? Used their favoritism against me. She tilted her head. That makes it sound so ugly. I just gave them a little push. They were always going to pick me over you. That is how it has always been. Her words sent a sharp pain through me, but for the first time, I did not try to argue. I just saw the truth. She was right. They had always chosen her, and they always would. You are pathetic, I said quietly. You have always had everything handed to you, and instead of being grateful, you destroy anyone who threatens to have something of their own. She smirked, and I exhaled, shaking my head. You may have won this battle, Melanie, but you are in for a rude awakening, because one day, you will run out of people to manipulate, and when that day comes, you will be alone. Her smirk faltered just for a second. Whatever. Get out of here. I did not need to be told twice. With one last glance at the house that had never really felt like home, I got into my car and drove away. For the first few weeks, I stayed with a friend, trying to figure out my next steps. I worked extra hours, saved aggressively, and kept my head down. Then, the news came. Melanie and Josh had lost everything. The bank had repossessed their house. Josh had left her, and Mom and Dad had drained their savings trying to bail her out. They were struggling now, barely able to pay their own bills. I should have felt satisfaction, but honestly, all I felt was emptiness. One evening, as I closed up at work, my phone buzzed. Mom. I hesitated before answering. What do you want? I asked, voice devoid of emotion. There was a pause. Then, in a tone I had never heard from her before, one that was small, almost uncertain, she said, we need to talk. I almost laughed. After everything? About what? She sighed. It is, Melanie. She made some bad decisions, and now she's in trouble. She caught herself. I was hoping you could help her. I felt an eerie sense of deja vu. You mean you want my money? I said flatly. She hesitated. Not just that. She is completely broken right now. She has nowhere to go. Josh left her, and she really needs support. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone. Where was that concern when I needed support? When you threw me out because she wanted my money. Mom's silence spoke volumes. She is your sister, she finally said, her voice strained. Family should help each other. A bitter laugh escaped me. Family? You only call me family when Melanie needs something. That is not true, isn't it? I interrupted. Did you ever care about me? Or was that just a backup plan in case she messed up? More silence. I sighed, shaking my head. Mom, I'm done. You made your choice. Live with it. And for the first time in my life, I hung up on her. After hanging up on my mother, a strange sense of relief washed over me. For years, I had sought validation from family that had never truly seen me, but at that moment, I realized I did not need it. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn love that was conditional, but now I was free. Still, the weight of my mother's words lingered. Melanie had lost everything. Her husband, her house, her lifestyle, all gone. A small part of me wondered if she had finally learned what it felt like to be abandoned by the people who were supposed to support you. But I was not naive. A few days later, my phone buzzed again. It was Melanie this time. I stared at the screen. If this had happened a year ago, I might have rushed to pick up, eager to mend things. But now, I let it ring. She called 3 more times. Then a text. Please, we need to talk. I took a deep breath and typed back. What do you want, Melanie? Her response came instantly. Can we meet? Just once? I just need to talk to you in person. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I needed to see her, to see if anything had really changed. We met at a small coffee shop downtown. When I walked in, I almost did not recognize her. Melanie looked exhausted. Her once meticulously styled hair was now tied back messily, and she wore clothes that looked far less expensive than what she was used to. For the first time, she did not look like the untouchable golden child. She looked lost. I sat across from her, arms crossed. You have 5 minutes. She flinched but nodded. I know I messed up. I said nothing, letting her continue. Josh left me. He said I was too demanding, too selfish. He said he was tired of trying to meet my expectations when I never cared about his. And then, when we lost the house, Mom and Dad tried to fix it, but they could not. They have nothing left either. I kept my expression neutral. I get it now, she said, looking at me for the first time. I get how it felt for you all those years. I thought I was untouchable, that no matter what I did, someone would always bail me out. But now, I have nothing. And her voice broke slightly. I need help. I leaned back. Help? You mean money, right? She hesitated but nodded. A bitter chuckle escaped me. Unbelievable. Please, she whispered. I'm not asking you to fix everything. I do not know where else to turn. I studied her face, searching for any sign of manipulation. But for the first time, she looked genuinely desperate. Still, I shook my head. I'm sorry, Melanie. But no. Her face crumbled. Please you took everything from me. I interrupted. My home, my savings, any chance I had at a relationship with our parents. You used me. And when I had nothing left to give, you threw me away. You and Mom made your choice. Now, you have to live with it. Tears welled in her eyes. So that is it? You're just leaving me like this? I exhaled. I'm finally choosing me, Melanie. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out without looking back. Since cutting ties with my family, my life had taken a turn for the better. I found a small apartment, continued working toward my dream, and finally started to feel free. Then, one day I received an email. Subject from Mom. Message. I did not expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did to you. I do not deserve your kindness, but I hope one day you will find it in your heart to forgive me. If you do not, I understand. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry. I stared at the email for a long time. I'd spent years wanting to hear those words, and now that I had them, I felt nothing. Because sometimes apologies come too late, and sometimes walking away is the best thing you can do for yourself. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload.